Right now, how the heck are you? I am Mark Walters, of course, filling your prescription for freedom today and every day on this Sunday monster cast being heard on hundreds of radio stations, sitting here in the Kahr Firearms Group studios with you in front of the CZ microphone. It's all brought to you from the Patriot Mobile Communication and Command Center Ranch by the National Rifle Association. Greg in Dallas, Texas, how the heck are you? Welcome home, brother. Welcome home.
Hey, thank you, man. Not too bad. I am trying not to melt. It's been incredibly hot out here this past week.
Greg's been out for a week. If you listen to the Daily Defense Show, well, you already know that. And we've missed him. But Bobby and Derek did a great job, and we thank both of those gentlemen for doing it. The professionals over there at Salem Radio Network, man. We appreciate it very much. They did a great job. Greg, I'm going to let you see. Can you remember your shtick? Because we've added Facebook Live again since your departure last week. Yeah, go for it and tell people.
Well, let's see if I remember how to do this. Places to watch the show are going to be YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. Just do a search for Armed American Radio with Mark Walters. You can head over to X and watch us at AAR Mark. You can always head on over to armedamericanradio.org or .com. Hit that menu icon, then select your Watch Live or Listen Live option. And to join our live chat, all you have to do is download Telegram, create your profile, and search for Armed American Radio Conversations.
Yeah, I was able to take a sip of that blackout coffee because you had a little bit longer spiel than you normally have. But we're going to get started. Let's get ready to rock and roll. Guys, we have a great program for you coming up. You've got me for the half hours. A couple things I want to go over with you. We're going to get into that right now. AWR Hawkins will be here at the bottom of the hour. Next hour coming up, we have a gentleman. Well, Rob Pincus will be here for the hour, but he'll be with me for the first 15 minutes discussing what we're going to talk about for the remainder of the hour, which is a man in New York who is under indictment for about 12 felonies because he lives under a tyrant, ladies and gentlemen, and it will anger you. And it's just it's an example, and he will be at as you know, normally I don't put anybody that's under indictment or under investigation on the program. That's for a lot of different reasons. I don't want somebody to say something that might get them in trouble or harm their case going down the road, because this is public record here and it's out there. It can be used. But his attorney will be here as well, his attorney Kevin. And we'll explain all of that in the next hour, but you don't want to miss it. It's going to make you, those of you who live in New York, we're talking specifically Albany here, and you're listening in Albany, New York. You don't want to miss that hour, so make sure to stay tuned. At the top of the next hour, it's going to be a mind-bending hour for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get started here. What happened at that In-N-Out Burger in Twin Falls, Idaho, this past this weekend is one of those stories that, you know, they always shake you. You don't like to hear this stuff, and it does happen all too frequently. And I actually contemplated not even talking about it. Why? Because, well, I have to talk about it briefly. I'll do that here in this segment, and might touch on it again in the roundtable, because none of this has anything to do with your gun rights. The other side tries to make it about your gun rights. We know that to be the case. But let's just go here and get real. It was just like any other ordinary Saturday afternoon, right? For those in Idaho and Twin Falls, people grabbing lunch, you know, hanging out with their kids. You know, a lot of excited employees because this In-N-Out had just opened. I think it had been open for about a week. So they were excited to be there, and if you've ever had an In-N-Out burger, I guarantee you Twin Falls was excited to have an In-N-Out, because In-N-Out's the best as far as I'm concerned. You know, a lot of cars in the drive-thru, and then in a split second, as is always the case, pure evil shows up with a rifle. Now, expect to hear all about that from the anti-gunners because of what's coming up with the Supreme Court we've been talking about for a while. No doubt they'll try to use that. It'll all be for naught, but they're going to. But the authorities said the gunman opened fire at the crowded restaurant. He killed 3 at last check before the show. That's where I found it to be, too. 7 others wounded. Before he died, from what cops said, was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Investigators are saying that he acted alone. There was no other threat to the community, and they're still working to determine a motive, which will take a while. But before you go any further, you've got to remember what matters the most, and that's 3 people, innocent people, are gone, and 7 others, if not more, hurt, and hopefully nobody else passes away as a result of this loser. And sadly, there are families that are now planning funerals instead of family dinners as a result of, yet again, another sick 24-year-old loser madman. An In-N-Out employee just simply went to work and never went home. It's a terrible deal, and all of us at Armed American Radio offer our prayers to the families and to the first responders and everybody else. But there's a twist to this story that becomes critically important for those of us who talk about the Second Amendment every single day. And that's because, and I have to be honest with you, most mainstream media is covering this, but they're covering it because they absolutely have to, because it was caught on film. But an armed, law-abiding citizen returned fire on the attacker. And it was all caught on film using a silenced weapon, I believe was an FN, suppressed, and an off-duty police officer also. And they are being hailed as heroes that they are for going after the gunfire and cornering the madman and stopping the remainder of what would have been just an absolute slaughter. Yet again, a law-abiding citizen, and that just blows up the other side's narrative. So according to Police Chief Matthew Hicks, those actions helped divert the shooter away from the restaurant, preventing even more deaths and injuries. That is absolutely 100% true. But think about it. You know, this guy was not, he's been identified. We'll get there in just a moment. He wasn't looking for 15 minutes of fame. He just was there like anybody else. He wasn't likely trying to become a social media hero, just an ordinary American who suddenly finds himself standing in the middle of a nightmare that unfolds right before his eyes. He had to make a decision. He could run, he could hide, or he could fight. He chose to fight. Now, to be fair, I don't know exactly what happened every single second. I don't really have to know. I don't know exactly how many rounds were fired and by whom, but we'll never know how many lives were saved. That's something we'll never know. But what we can tell you is it was countless, no doubt about it. And anyone who tells you that they do or they know anymore, they're just getting ahead of it like the TV pundits do. They don't know crap until everything's reported. And there's likely a lot that's not being said right now. It will come out fairly quickly because this scumbag is where he belongs, and that's taking a dirt nap in hell. But we do know what the police chief has already told us, that the armed citizen and the off-duty trooper, the Idaho trooper, interrupted that attack and helped prevent additional casualties, which is huge. That's extraordinary. Because in a situation like that, folks, every second counts, not minutes, seconds. The average patrol officer can't just show up. Cops can't just be there. They'll tell you that. Now, there was an off-duty cop that was there, thank God, but it took other law enforcement time to get there, as is always the case. Thankfully, there were two armed, say, one civilian and one off-duty cop, as we said. Cops respond as fast as they can, but it's usually always after the fact. It's after the violence has already started. And that's not a criticism of law enforcement. It's just a reality. The first responder at every active shooting is the person who is already there. That's you, or in this case, these two individuals. Hopefully it never happens to you, but thankfully they were there because countless lives were saved. And that's exactly what happened. But, you know, you and I both know what's coming tomorrow. It hasn't been too loud right now, but it will. Maybe it probably already has by the time you're hearing this, but the usual talking points are going to come out. We need another gun law. We need another restriction. We need another ban. This is why the Supreme Court can't find these guns. These guns have to be banned. We're going to hear it all day long. It's just what they do. But here's a real simple question for those clowns. What law stopped this guy yet again before he pulled the trigger? What law? None. What regulation worked? What prevented him? Was there a sign that prevented him from walking into the parking lot? I don't know. It wouldn't have stopped him anyway. If you think it would, you're stupid. What magazine capacity law stopped this idiot? What gun-free zone sign changed the heart of the killer? None. The answer is, I would, say maybe painfully obvious, because it is painfully obvious. It's obvious to me. It's painfully obvious to the other side. Because the answer is none of them. Because criminals don't obey any gun laws. How much more do we need to know? Time after time after time. They don't, and they never will. If they did, they wouldn't be criminals. The law-abiding citizen who returned fire, what about him? He's the one that followed the law. He followed Idaho law. Thankfully, thank God. And he chose really to accept what is an enormous responsibility, and that was to carry a firearm. He didn't create the violence. He responded to it. That's the distinction. And there's a lot to talk about going on there. We'll talk about it in greater detail, likely in the roundtable. We'll probably talk a little bit about it somewhat with AWR Hawkins coming up. But what's really important to point out, ladies and gentlemen, as is always the case, the other side will never acknowledge it, but you know what? NBC reporting it. All the major outlets are reporting it. We can't lose sight of this one simple truth. Evil chose the parking lot at the In-N-Out. Guess who else showed up? Courage. a law-abiding citizen, and an off-duty trooper. Courage showed up. An individual who chose to carry a firearm lawfully made a huge difference today or this weekend and saved countless lives. When we come back, we'll break down some more issues because it dovetails well with what I was talking about on Friday, back right after this. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Rifle Association bringing it all to you every single day on Armed American Radio's Daily Defense, and, of course, the Monstercast, the National Rifle Association. You can join them at nra.org/AAR, involved in a lot of court battles right now. The NRA's got your back, so please join. It's $35 for 1 year. It's a no-brainer. And by the way, speaking of, it's not the NRA, but NRA reminds me of the conventions because I do the NRA conventions. But the Gun Owners of America convention was this weekend in Des Moines, Iowa. I was unable to go, but lots of my friends were there. And many of them are returning home today, which is why we didn't even bother them to come on the program, let them get home safely and all that. AAR. I was going to move in a different direction, and I decided when we ended that last segment to go back to this because I'm talking about the in and out. And the reason I'm kind of switch gears here, or gears to me anyway, stay on the same topic. That's switching gears for me because I had intended to talk about something different briefly, but I think it's too important. We were talking about how you make that enormous responsibility to carry a firearm for your own personal protection and self-defense. Look, most people who carry a firearm will never, ever, ever pull it. And millions of us carry firearms every day. I was forced to pull it once, and I became one of those statistics because I never had to pull the trigger. My gun did exactly what it was designed to do without my having to pull the trigger, and that was deter two criminals from continuing their approach to me. Worked perfectly. Thank God I didn't have to squeeze the trigger, but I would have. I was going home that day at their expense if I had to. And I'm pretty sure they knew that. That's why they decided to go a different direction. So I go back to the individual in Idaho who made that same decision and accepted that responsibility to carry that firearm. And the other side likes to talk about how it never happens. This never happens. It rarely happens, except it does happen. And we'll talk about that with Dr. Lott coming up this week. He's got numbers to back that up and prove it. We've had this conversation with him in the past on the show. But we will discuss that because, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, it does happen. And when it happens just like that. Just like that, in an instant. This guy didn't create the violence. He responded to the violence. And that's important to point out. It's worth discussing. Because the media loves to ridicule or ignore the phrase, good guy with a gun. We've all heard it. They mock it. They dismiss it. They treat it like it's some kind of, gun nut world fantasy until it happens. And it happens hundreds of thousands of times, if not millions of times annually in this country. When an actual armed citizen actually intervenes during an actual mass shooting, not something made up by the gun violence archives, but that part of the story gets a fraction, if any, of the attention. But gun rights have been in the news so much, I was shocked when I pulled my first search earlier today, and NBC was reporting it right up top. And it was interesting that just about every outlet I saw mentioned the same thing. And they didn't disparage it. Why? That's really important to talk about. Because they couldn't. Because it happened. Because they saw it. It was right there. Now, in days gone by, in a bygone era, they would have. It would have been just a huge lie of omission. But not with this stuff now. This I'm holding up for those of you that aren't watching my phone. Not with social media. Not anymore. It's impossible to ignore. They can't ignore it. It blew up their narrative. Just watch how the anti-gunners handle it. It's pretty predictable. We know what they're going to do. But yeah, when something like this happens, it really does. It blows up their preferred narrative, something we've talked about on this program for years. Now look, every situation is different. Mine was different. And in many cases, an armed citizen might not be able to intervene. Maybe it's not in their best interest to intervene. Maybe more harm can come. Here's the problem. It's a split-second decision, and those decisions carry tremendous risk. And there are times, of course, when protecting your family and escaping might absolutely be the right decision at that time, depending on your current situation. You got a baby with you in a shopping cart and you can get away. It's probably best to do so if you can do so safely. But there are times when ignoring the threat is impossible. You can't. You have to make that decision. But here's the thing that, yet again, Idaho points out and proves. We've said this for years. It's not law-abiding citizens. It's not you and I that are the problem. Not the people that are legally carrying firearms. We're the ones that are overwhelmingly the law-abiding people doing nothing but trying to protect innocent life, not take it, unless we have to. And in the bigger picture, it goes back to the heart of the Second Amendment and why the Second Amendment exists. Because the other side wants you to believe that, well, the Second Amendment wasn't written because the founders thought about using it to stop a robbery. It was more because everybody had guns for hunting. It was, you had to be part of the military, all the nonsense. Okay, look, and this reminds us every single time this happens, and it happens frequently. It wasn't written for sporting clays, folks. It wasn't written because target shooting is enjoyable, and it is. It's fun. They're fun activities. But that's not the constitutional purpose for the Second Amendment, even though the other side likes to say it is. It's not. The Second Amendment recognizes the inherent right of us to defend ourselves, our families, and our communities when innocent life is at stake. For what reason? The founders knew this. Evil exists, ladies and gentlemen. It existed in Twin Falls. It still exists in Twin Falls, even though this clown is dead. There's evil everywhere. It existed before this. It exists today, and it's going to exist tomorrow. It will always exist. So the question isn't whether evil exists. It's whether we retain the ability to defend ourselves when it appears without warning and without question, because we have the inherent right to do so. We shouldn't have to fight our own government for that right, but we do every single day. Owning a firearm, as we've talked about before, you make that decision to carry a gun. You got to check your ego. You got to check your machismo, your bravado. That's not what it's about. It's not about pretending to be an action hero of sorts. It's not about posting pictures online, although I've done it. We all love our guns. We post pictures of ourselves with our guns. I don't tend to do that much anymore, but a lot of people do. It's an enormous responsibility, and it means staying trained. It means understanding the law in the state you're in, and it means really developing really good, sound judgment, ladies and gentlemen. So if that time happens, you know how to react instinctively. It means recognizing, and this is kind of tough to say, but it's true, that your firearm is there for the worst day of your life. That's when you're going to need it. But it's also there for the best day of your life, because some of the best times I've had in my life were with my firearm. So it's kind of interesting. But it's overarching. It's there for the worst day of your life. Thank God those two individuals had their firearms. We'll be back with AWR right after this. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. We got a lot going on here in the background. If you're watching on your screens, you saw that it stated that we'll be back in 21 after. It's been busy back here behind the scenes. We'll have AWR's picture up for those of you that like to watch the program here in just a couple seconds. But in the meantime, guys, make sure I've got blackout coffee going on right here in this mug. My little dog woke me up at 3:30 this morning and wanted to eat, and, well, she'd never let me go back to sleep because we had some thunder and it scares her. So blackout coffee has been a godsend. Greg, this is the time. I haven't had to ask you this in a week. How many cups of blackout coffee, knowing what I just told you, do you think I had, not just to start my day, but throughout the day today?
I'm going to go with at least 3.7, almost 4.
A pot and a half, man. I don't know how many.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good number.
I got it going through my veins right now. Thank God I do. Blackoutcoffee.com/AAR, ladies and gentlemen. You too can stay awake on Blackout Coffee. Let's go to AWR Hawkins Breitbart News. Our dear friend AWR, welcome in, brother. How are you, man?
Doing great. Great to be with you.
Well, let's keep the conversation going. You probably weren't listening to the first half, as I know you were traveling and you're busy this week. But we're talking about the in-and-out shooter, and of course we have, yet again, what the left hates, AWR, and that's, wow, a law-abiding citizen and an off-duty cop join forces and stop. We'll never know how many lives were saved, but I want your take on this.
Oh, yeah, I mean, particularly the armed citizen. I mean, yes, thank goodness for the off-duty officer, too. Don't get me wrong, but
right.
I love seeing a good guy with a gun step up and do what's got to be done. And it was beautiful. It's a great reminder. You know, you got to stay armed, but not only armed. You have to stay alert. You have to take in your environment, pay attention, and you know, this guy exemplified all those things.
What do we know about him? And I know you've been doing a lot of research on this. I've seen your work today on this as this was unfolding from yesterday through today. What do we know about the armed citizen? Is there anything you can tell us other than, you know, that he was there? What else do we know? Any particulars that you can give us?
I don't know anything. I mean, I know from looking at the video, it almost looked like he may have had a suppressed handgun.
I can tell you what he had.
I can't tell I can't tell if it was suppressed or if it was just a long barrel, because everything I've seen is fuzzy or grainy, I should say.
What I heard, and it was confirmed by two other people, so I'll say this, I mentioned it in the previous two segments, that it was a suppressed FN.
Okay.
Which would make sense if you go back and look at it, and if you watch the video, it would also account, because he did get rounds off. Now, I don't know any other details. I don't know if any rounds were successful. I don't know, but I do know that the returning gunfire, took the killer off of his mark. That much I do know.
Yeah, the witness said that the killer had to seek cover.
Right.
When that guy was firing at him. And so that may have been when that guy and the off-duty trooper were firing together. I don't know, but the witness says that when the law-abiding citizen began firing on the killer had to take cover. So that definitely, I mean, no matter how you slice it, he had to have saved lives.
Oh, there's no question about it. Now, like I mentioned previously, we're not going to know how many lives were saved. But I think I can safely say, based on the layout and everything I've seen, it was likely dozens of lives. And what does this say? How many times, AWR, have we talked about this over the years? My gosh, I've lost count. I wish I had $1 for every time we've discussed it. What I found fascinating was all the major networks are, in fact, covering this now. Now, we both know why. Because it's out there, social media. They cannot ignore it because the video is out there. The sheriff is talking about how lives were saved. Thank God they were there. They would look like buffoons if they didn't report it. But isn't that a good thing that they are finally reporting that? I mean, we've covered countless ones of these where they've never reported it, A-Dubs. They've never reported it. Now they are because they have to, right?
Right. No, it is good. Even if, as you say, their hand is forced, even if that's the truth, at least the hand is now forced. So it's good to have it covered, because people with common sense, when they read this, there's going to be somebody who wasn't armed yesterday who's going to be armed tomorrow, because they're going to go, I am not going to be the victim.
Yeah, and this might sound like a crazy question, but I wonder, and I'm kind of just thinking out loud here, and I'll ask it of you. We really don't know, but I'm going to guess that this likely changes a reporter's mind or two. When they report on this, because their hand was in fact forced, it might likely force an honest reporter to have to do some soul searching here. Could that be true? Or am I just being overly optimistic?
Well, I mean, I think you're being optimistic. I don't know if that's overly. I mean, I think there's a chance what you're saying is true, but you have to hope. You have to hope, because the bottom line is you want more good people armed, even if they were formerly naysaying reporters. If they change their mind and they're armed now, that is good for everyone around them. And so you have to hope that it happens.
Yeah, it would be nice, because both of us know people whose minds have been changed. I think of the politician in Ohio, Michael DuBose, who voted against Ohio's concealed carry law 3 years in a row, and then through no fault of his own was attacked on his way home after he got back from voting no on bills. In Columbus, he was attacked at gunpoint by 3 people. He completely changed his tune. And I'm proud to say that Michael DuBose and I, while he was a Democrat from South Cleveland, and this shocks people, he was a black guy, and he and I became very, very good friends because his mind was changed. And his vote later helped bring concealed carry to Ohio because of that happening. And I know he changed a lot of minds because we helped him and about 20 of his family and friends get training because their minds were changed. Now, I don't know that the reporter or anybody else in a position of authority would admit that. I would like to think an honest reporter would write a piece and say, you know what? This changed my position. Because, A-Dubs, if more people in that business started reporting the facts, and by that I mean just reporting the stories, it would change people's mindset on guns in this country and the right to own and carry them, wouldn't it? If the narrative were different, if the script were flipped, wouldn't that matter?
Oh, yeah. Well, because people would then see that guns are used to save lives far more often than they are used to take innocent lives. I mean, it's not even close. The justifiable use of firearms in defense of life is it eclipses the number of firearm homicides we have every year. And it doesn't mean that those homicides aren't horrible. It doesn't mean that if you lost a family member, it's not terrible. I don't mean that, but
Right.
I just mean the use of guns to save lives eclipses the use of guns to take them.
Yeah, and it's hard. I believe me, I understand what you're talking about. It's hard to, you've got 3 families and 7 with wounded, siblings, spouses, maybe grandmas. I don't know the 7. Hopefully they're all okay. But there are 3 that aren't going home as a result of a madman, not a result of a law-abiding citizen. In fact, the other 20 or 30 or 40 people who were in line in that restaurant are, in fact, alive today because of 2 individuals who were there with firearms that joined forces. And I would have loved to have reported to you, ladies and gentlemen, tonight that it was one of those 2 that put this scumbag down like the animal he was. I would have loved to have been able to report that. I was hopeful that that was the case. But regardless, just the return fire stopped it. So I hope that minds have been changed in this AWR, because facts are stubborn things, brother. Facts don't suffer fools. And if we can flip a reporter, if you're a reporter out there and you're paying attention to this story, do some real research, man. Start writing the truth about this stuff. That would make a huge difference if that narrative changed in this country. I know we're going to get ready to take a break here. When we come back, AWR, I want to go over to Kathy Hochul in New York, because we're beginning to see, and I talked a lot about this on Friday, we're beginning to see the anti-gun playbook emerge in the post-Bruin environment as the anti-gunners are losing hugely in courtrooms across the country and soon to be at the Supreme Court. We'll talk with AWR Hawkins about that when we come back, and we'll focus a little bit on that nasty tyrant in New York State. And it will be a great segue into our next hour as well, because we will be talking to a person who is under at least 12 felony indictments because of Kathy Hochul and New York gun laws. It's a mess up there in New York, and a lot of listeners up there in New York paying attention in Albany, where the stories we're going to talk about in the next hour actually unfold from. So we'll be talking about that next. Great segue. We'll be back. One more segment to go with AWR. Unfortunately, we got to talk about that tyrant, Kathy Hochul. Back after this. NRA.org/AAR, and you can find all of our great partners at armedamericanradio.com. I do want to point out that if you were listening on the stations during the break, you did still hear the Cove Pure ad. That promotion ended on the 31st, sadly. I was hopeful that we would be able to extend that through to the 1st, but we were not able to do that. And we thank them for being here. It was temporary, and they were wonderful to work with. I would highly recommend you get one. Yeah, it's not $250 off anymore. It's probably $50 off, but it is worth every penny. It's covepure.com. Make sure to check them out, but I just wanted to let you know that up front. Those ads will stop running after the show tonight, by the way. AWR Hawkins, Breitbart News, let's go back to you. Let's go to Kathy Hochul, because AWR, I think what they're doing here is they're exposing their playbook in the face of mounting losses. And Kathy Hochul, boy, just when you think they can't hit another ceiling or get to another floor, they do. Now she's pushing to replace the repealed ATF gun controls with New York state laws. You want to clue us in on that one?
Oh, yeah. I mean, basically when Director Takeda came in and announced over 30 rules that would either be repealed, reformed, or otherwise changed, she's coming in behind him now to say that she's going to do some things with regulatory action, that'll be executive order, and then she's going to do some things with the legislature. She's going to push them to do it. But as you said, state-level gun control, place the ATF rule from the Biden era that Director Takeda getting rid of.
Hey, Dubs, if I can ask you to step to the left or the right, that would be perfect. We want everybody to hear every word you're saying. You broke up a little bit there, but I think everybody got the picture there. Just to put it in a nutshell for you, ladies and gentlemen, she hates your guts, and she's going to use state powers and the state legislature to do what the ATF was doing under Biden, and then she's going to put it on steroids. Is that did I frame that right? Is that what's getting ready to happen? I believe that's the case.
Yeah, that's exactly what's fixing to happen. And so,
Unbelievable.
But here's the deal: this play is going to fall flat at some point because the Supreme Court is so zeroed in on this. You can only make so many moves to escape ruin. And as these other rulings are added to it, whether it's Wolford, whether the other ruling that came down, whatever it is, as these keep compounding, there's not that much room for these people to run anymore.
No, and you know what? I'm going to add to that. They're not going to be able to hide anymore. They're going to force court challenges by playing these hands. There's no question about it. But all they're doing is cementing their own demise with further court activity, particularly after what's getting ready to smack them in the head. We're guessing right around June 27th when the Supreme Court will bring its ruling down. But the oral arguments on the two quote-unquote assault weapons bans, Cook County, Illinois, and Connecticut Citizens Defense League, will be heard between October and Christmas. And 6 months later, we're going to get a ruling that's going to smack them up the head. And they know that. So why can't they just accept defeat at that point? At least on that angle. Why? Why won't they just do it and admit defeat? Why can't they do it?
Well, part of this is their last gasp at fundraising on this topic.
Fundraising, boom.
So they've got to keep. They got to keep pushing and get the fringe to go ahead and give up some more money before the Supreme Court steps in and closes the party down.
So I guess that begs this question: who's stupid enough to keep giving them money? Clearly, people who are not plugged in, that are drinking the Kool-Aid, that don't know what's coming down the pike, because they're signaling to their members or whoever it is they're trying to raise money from that they stand a chance.
Right. Well, do you remember during 2016 that group of odd-looking people that got together for Hillary Clinton's victory celebration? They all walked out dejected. Those are the kind of people giving them money. Those are the people that, as I say, when they read to themselves, their lips move. Those are the folks giving them.
I don't know. You got to question the intelligence quotient here. Okay, it's not real high at this point. It's not like this hasn't been making national news. If you're donating money to anti-gun groups in the face of mounting losses, I'm going to say you're not too bright at this point. But this does signal to me, I would love to know if you agree, because I went at it from a three-prong approach on Friday. Not only did I cover what Hochul's doing, but I also looked at the sensitive places deal, for example, and you wrote about it, the prohibition against congregants being armed for self-defense in Maryland. And then you had a piece over from the Rockefeller Institute on Government. And it just seems that, now I don't think those three outfits are talking to each other, but we're beginning to see a playbook emerge on how they're going to go at this when they lose again. They're going to have to shift tactics, AWR, and I think we're beginning to see that unfold.
Right. Well, the Rockefeller suggestions were pathetic, and I'm sure the listeners know, but those suggestions were made to offset constitutional carry. How is the legislature that passed constitutional carry, how do you expect that same legislature to then consider gun controls to offset constitutional carry? I mean, these people are just not bright. It must not be that tough to get an internship.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. I mean, I don't know who they're hiring over there, but hey, before we have to cut you loose, we've got about a minute left. Nancy Sinatra, you wrote about this. I have not spoken about this yet. I don't know who's paying attention to Nancy Sinatra. If you ask my kids who Frank Sinatra is, they'll say, oh, they know who he is. They've heard the name. I still play some Frank Sinatra music from time to time. You know, it's Frank's timeless, man. You got to love him. But she's calling to eliminate all guns. Is anybody listening to this woman?
No. She's made a fool out of herself. She's doing that in light of the quote-unquote mass shooting that actually wasn't a mass shooting.
Right.
It was a shootout, and I believe gang-related, but even if not gang-related, it was still a shootout, and one of the suspects is 15 years old. And so, yeah, she just
30.
looks silly. She's putting herself, she's a fast approaching Jane Fonda level.
Oh, God, it's so aggravating.
Pathetic.
It is pathetic. AWR, thank you, brother. I know you're traveling. I know how busy you've been, and I do appreciate you being here. We love you. AWR Hawkins Breitbart News. Go there, read everything that he writes. He's done so much for this program over the years. We love him to death, and we can't wait to bring him back to you again next week, particularly when he gets his feet back on the ground, because he's been all
60.
over the place. Ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, this is an hour you don't want to miss. This is something I don't normally do, and I'm bending my own rules here today to do this. I spoke with the attorney, and I'm going to introduce you to an individual in the next hour who is under at least 12 felony indictments and facing many, many years in prison in New York State. That's why I wanted to go back and talk a little bit about Hawkins. And I'll just say that this is what can happen to you when you live behind a blue wall under tyrants like Hawkins. Albany, you're listening. Rochester, you're listening. New York City, you're listening. And other areas throughout the state, you're tuned in right now on various radio stations. I want you, all of you, particularly those of you in blue states and in New York, to pay very careful attention to what's coming up in the next hour. I'll be talking with Rob Pincus about it in the first segment, and then we're going to bring in the attorney and his client in the next hour, 6 after. We'll be right back. Oh, I love doing this. I can't think of anything else I'd rather be doing right now than having conversations with you on Armed American Radio, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you feel the same way about what you do, because honest to goodness, it's such an amazing time. We've been fighting for gun rights on the nation's airwaves for 18 years, and we've got so much to talk about. And what we're going to be talking about in this hour is really why we do what we do. It really is. So pay careful attention to this upcoming hour. First off, let me welcome you into the Kahr Firearms Group studios. Mark Walters in front of the CZ, powerful CZ Platinum microphone, busting out on hundreds of radio stations across the nation as we bring Armed American Radio's network to you here on Armed American Radio's huge monster cast. And Greg in Dallas, Texas, welcome back, my brother. You were out for a week, and hopefully you had a great time and got a lot done and had some fun in the process. Welcome back in, Greg.
Thank you very much, man. Yeah, and I did. I had a good time. You know, not everything worked out as planned, but hey, I made use of the time that was given to me.
Does it ever, though? It never.
No,
really
it never does. You know, no good plan survives first contact.
Well, let's see how you do on round two. Tell people where they can watch, and that includes Facebook as well. So make sure to tell everybody about that and where to get in the chat, and then we'll go right to our first guest, who is going to stay with us for the hour, and we'll explain everything coming up right after Greg gives us the lowdown.
Yeah, sure. Places to watch the show are going to be YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. Just do a search for Armed American Radio with Mark Walters. You can head over to X and watch us at AAR Mark. You can head over to armedamericanradio.org or .com, hit that menu icon, then select your watch live or listen live option. And to join our live chat, all you have to do is download Telegram, create your profile, and search for Armed American Radio Conversations.
That'll do it. Rob Pincus, my brother. Known you for a long time. Welcome back. You were just on the show this past week. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing good, Mark. It's a busy time. It's been a while since I did back-to-back weeks on the show, but there's so much going on.
Oh, my gosh, it's ridiculous. And let's just say that this is really disturbing. You and I talked earlier today, actually a couple days back, about this. And as you know, I was hesitant because I'm kind of breaking my own rules here, you know. I've had opportunity over the years to bring people in who were under investigation and self-defense shootings, and I've always chosen to not bring them on, or who were facing indictment for charges, whatever they may be, because I don't want anybody to say anything wrong that's going to get them in any trouble. It's just been my own rule, and we're going to kind of break that rule today under advice of counsel, which we're good with. I spoke with the attorney today, but you were the one that brought this to my attention, and suffice to say, man, I'm furious, like a lot of people are going to be, about this hour. Give us the lowdown and set us up with this, because you got this information to me, and it was extremely compelling. And I'm just going to turn the mic over to you. Tell me how this came about and what you know and what we're getting ready to hear.
Yeah, the setup is one of the things I do, of the many hats I wear, is I do a lot of consulting, most of it pro bono, for free. People reach out, where they reach out to Second Amendment organization or through the gun makers match, or they reach out to me directly when they're facing unfair firearms-related charges. And, of course, there's a lot of situations that involve use of a gun to defend themselves or others. But more and more over the last few years, these situations have involved privately made firearms. And that's something I'm really passionate about, something I'm very involved in. And so there's people in that community who know that I'm somebody they might be able to reach out to for consultation or help, and or have their lawyers reach out to. And I'm breaking a rule, too, I guess, in a way, because I usually counsel against this kind of thing, as you would, to come out into the media. But earlier this week, I was talking with Demetrio and his lawyer, Kevin, who everybody's going to meet here in a few minutes, and they can tell you, I asked several times, "You sure?" And they said they were sure. And I said, well, then I know a couple guys we can talk to if you want to get this story out, and you want to get out in front of your case before it goes to trial, which is incredibly rare, and share the details of the case, which I'll let them do. But let me say that one of the things about this case in particular in the state of New York, it is now the third case in the last 8 months that I am aware of and that I've been consulted on that deal with people's purchase histories online being investigated, not because they were doing anything wrong, but those purchase histories, particularly by a unit at the NYPD. There's also a unit for firearms trafficking, supposedly interdiction, at the New York State Police. And what these units do is, sometimes with some suspicion, but in several cases, and I believe in the case that everyone's about to hear about, without any suspicion whatsoever specific to the person, no other crimes, no drugs, no violence, no accusations, no domestic violence, no restraining orders, nothing else has been done. Otherwise responsible gun owners who have legally owned guns, by the way, in every case that I'm talking about as well, that I've been involved in, they filled out the 4473s in New York, they have the registered guns, even in New York City, and yet the law enforcement and the prosecutor's offices in some areas of New York are going after them instead of actual criminals that are hurting other people, these completely victimless bureaucratic crimes because the paperwork isn't filled out or wasn't filled out in time or wasn't filled out correctly. And the whole thing starts because of a purchase through eBay or, unfortunately, even a purchase through some online sellers that the listeners would know. And those records are being handed over to the police, and then the investigations are being initiated.
Notice the underlying common denominator here, ladies and gentlemen, online. That right here is the operative word. All right, now, I do want to say this, and you know this, but Demetrio and Kevin are both listening to this conversation right now. They're on the line waiting for us, and we're going to bring them in the next segment. But like you, that's what, and I'm going to make some predictions here, and I really can't prove these predictions, but it just seems very strange to me that what you just laid out would be, I don't know, just coincidental. Because the question I'm going to ask is, how did they find out about you? How did they know? Because you're buying.
I think you know. I know that you know, and I think the listeners that have been listening for the last however many 2 decades of us talking online and on the airwaves will know I'm not the conspiracy theory guy. I'm not the guy that takes one piece of information and runs with it. This is a repeated pattern that I have now been personally involved with and exposed to over the last year, and it's not just New York City, it's New York State, and it's a travesty. It's otherwise responsible gun owners, and in fact, in this case, even responsible in the way they own guns, the way they build guns, the way they interact with their guns, members of their community, great jobs, business owners who are being targeted and attacked by the government in the state of New York and in New York City simply for exercising their right to privately make firearms. And these are federally allowed rights. There's even ways to do it in a lot of these most restrictive states, but because, again, of a paperwork problem or because of a timeliness issue, they're being flagged as bad guys.
Yeah, the timeliness issue and the paperwork issue. Remember, you just heard that from Rob, ladies and gentlemen. That's going to rear its head in the upcoming segments as we move forward in this. Now, this is reminiscent of Biden-era ATF overreach that we can't prove. I mean, I can't prove to you that there's a crew of NYPD investigators anywhere that are sitting scouring online, but Rob, it certainly looks that way because there is absolutely no other way. Ladies and gentlemen, you've got to get out of the bubble and look at this objectively when you hear this conversation unfold. You have to ask yourself these questions. How is this happening? All right. Now, you're probably...
Yeah, well, that's the evidence.
Go ahead.
That's the evidence that's being presented in court. That's the evidence that's being used to get search warrants, to go into people's homes, to dig around, to throw their clothes, to break through things, to get passwords, to get safe keys, to get combinations, to see what's there, and to see if they can turn it. And it's basically, as far as I'm concerned, it's a paperwork fishing expedition that's stimulated by a purchase history online that we all know in these cases did go to building firearms, but in other cases they could be gifts, they could be completely irrelevant to firearms, they could be purchases waiting for future law changes, or that are intended to be used in ways that are compliant even with these incredibly restrictive state laws. And I think that's the big deal here, is what we really need to see is a federal crackdown, if you will, from the new ATF on these states that are abusing their powers and going after responsible gun owners.
Oh, and as
and
you
I
know...
think Kevin's case...
Go ahead. Finish that thought.
No, I was going to say, I think Kevin will make a great case for why Demetrio should absolutely not be convicted, and I think Demetrio makes a great case for some other things that as much as he wants to talk about, make this a very suspicious prosecution in Albany. And as has happened in other cases, sometimes it has nothing to do specifically with the gun. It's somebody in government is looking to get you, and they're going to find a way.
Yeah, and, guys, if you were listening to Armed American Radio's Daily Defense on Friday, I did a deep dive into what these states, we just talked about it with AWR Hawkins, and I focused specifically on that. I can't even use the words, the FCC won't let me, the way I would want to describe Hochul. She is evil, there is no question about it, but as this conversation unfolds, understand that this is part of the future playbook. This is what they're going to try to do at the state level in the face of all of these mounting losses in court. The attacks on you are just beginning, particularly if you live behind the blue wall. When we come back from the break, we're going to go to Demetrio and we're going to go to his attorney, Kevin, and they're going to explain to us exactly what happened. Prepare to get mad. And if you follow the Daily Defense Show, kind of keep Tate Adamiak in your mind, the would-have-been Navy SEAL who is sitting in a penitentiary right now for doing nothing wrong because of things he bought online. There are some similarities here. When we come back, it's going to be a great one. Don't go away. Welcome to partners throughout the remainder of the program. Let's go back to Rob Pincus. Rob, welcome back to the program, my friend. Always a pleasure. We'll introduce you again and reintroduce you again. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm going to keep it quiet. I'm going to go on mute, and I'm going to let you talk to the guys that are directly involved because I really think their story needs to get out, and I applaud them again for being willing to take the risks that come along with going public before the case has gone to trial.
Yeah, let's start with attorney Kevin O'Brien. Kevin O'Brien, welcome into the program, my friend. How are you? And I appreciate you being here. It was great talking with you earlier. This is going to be a very compelling conversation. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm great, and I really appreciate you having us on. It's very important to get this story out, not only for Demetrio, but for all of the citizens that this could happen to.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming here. And as you and I talked earlier, I'm kind of bending my own rule here, and I agree with you. It is extremely important to get this message out. And New York, you're listening in these cities. You're listening in Albany and Rochester and New York City and other cities across the state of New York. And many of you, many thousands of you are listening that live behind the blue wall. I want you all to pay very, very careful attention to what's happening here because there's more to this. I can read more into this because we are seeing some signals here about what's coming down the pike for a lot of you. Demetrio Daga, welcome to the program, my friend. I wish it was under better circumstances for the first time on the show. How are you, my friend? You hanging in okay?
I'm doing well, sir. I wanted to thank you again for allowing us to come on here and discuss some of the elements of this case. It's definitely concerning.
Oh, there is no question.
and I would definitely say disturbing as well. And some of the, the methods I think that are being used are highly concerning. And to Kevin's point, we're really concerned, not just for myself. How many other people has this happened to, or is this going to happen to?
Yeah, that's the underlying question. And sadly, I think it's going to be more because we're seeing some signals, particularly from your governor in New York, that they're going to be doing more of this. Demetrio, we'll get right back to you. I want to start with your attorney, Kevin. Kevin, again, as we talked about earlier today in the conversation we had, stop me if I ask any wrong questions. You cannot hurt my feelings. Okay, I understand that this is a fresh case and there's a lot at stake here. Demetrio's freedom is on the line many, many times over, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go into it. Kevin, explain what happened here.
Well, it's a very, very complex case, but trying to be as simple as I can. Demetrio, at a minimum, was a hobbyist. He's enjoyed working on and collecting guns throughout his life. He's always gone through the proper channels. The proper channels is kind of a crazy thing to say because I'm not sure the government has a right to limit any of these things. But at the end of the day, he didn't have some of the permits that were necessary. But what they're trying to do to him now, they got a search warrant from his online purchases. And it sounds crazy. It sounds like lawyer speak when I say these things, but he did nothing that would be impactful to anybody in the community. He never made a threat to anybody. There's no pictures of him even using these guns. There's no allegations that he was selling drugs or guns or anything other than simply possessing these guns that the government of New York says are illegal. He's done nothing wrong. He's threatened no one. He's hurt no one. I would feel completely comfortable with him living next door to me as my neighbor. And now they want to put him in prison. The best offer we've received is 8 years for a guy with no criminal history, 0 criminal history. He's got a family. He's a taxpayer. He had a very good job. He's got a very good family network. He's not some sort of scumbag. And he's sitting here facing losing his family for a minimum of 8 years. And if we lose at trial, which is likely based on these draconian laws, he's going to go for much longer. And this is not justice. This is not what anybody in a free society would believe is the right thing. We should be putting people in prison who hurt people, who interfere with other people's lives, but not a person like Demetrio who adds to the community, who does things in the community and is doing what the American dream is raising a family, working hard, supporting his family, and living his life as a free man. And now they want to put him in a cage.
Yeah, let me go to Demetrio. Demetrio, welcome back. I have to ask this from a personal standpoint because this is every person's nightmare. I fear, and every law-abiding person I know, and I think I speak for all law-abiding people, that's why law-abiding people are law-abiding people, fear what you're going through. We fear the judicial. We fear prison. This is an absolute horrific nightmare. What did you just get a call? Did somebody knock on your door? How was this even brought to your attention? What happened? Were you just sitting there one day and all of a sudden the posse shows up? How did this go down?
Sure. Yeah. So it was quite a surprise to me too. No, I had just dropped my children off at school. It was a normal day like any other. And I dropped my other son off at a family member's home. As I was leaving, I was stopped by a number of undercover vehicles and one marked unit, and a lot of guys with guns pointed at me. And, I had no idea what was going on. I honestly thought it was a mistake at first. I was on my way to work. And, the investigating officer came up and said, "What's this about?" He says, "It's about your guns." I didn't know what to say after that. So they immediately took me to my home, showed me the search warrants, executed them. I had to unlock my workshop. I had to turn off alarms, open my safes. They were stored where they're supposed to be. And That was it. And then the story they put out was that I'd been pulled over, they found a gun in my console, and basically that I was a trafficker. And that's for a year and a half. That was the story that was out in the media, without any accusation or insinuation that I'd ever trafficked or sold or transferred anything to anyone. I hadn't been charged with it, I hadn't been accused, but it's that someone was putting that story out in the media. And Kevin and I will kind of get into the lawfare end of it that's been used later on. But I think a lot of that was intentional because they're using people's confusion about the subject to scare them.
Yeah, and
and I think that's the big element of it.
We're getting ready to take our first break, and I'm going to ask both you gentlemen right now. I know we had you planned for 2 segments, and I know Rob's listening, but we're all of us. If you can stay with us for the remainder of the show, that would be great. We're not going to be able to get to all of this, and I want Americans to hear what you're going through. And something that you just mentioned, where you said they were stored where they were supposed to be. I know I'm not the only one that caught that. That's New York, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, because you know where my guns are, ladies and gentlemen? Wherever the hell I want them to be. Because they're my guns in my house. So, okay, Angry Mark can pop. I'm glad we're taking a break when we're taking a break. When we come back, we're going to get some more details. Hey, guys, the blackout coffee cup is empty. And I tell you, as we were going to the break, I'm glad there's a bottle of Blanton's out here, because I'm probably going to need it after this show. Rob Pincus, jump back in here with me if you would. Rob, you've known me a long time, and you've heard my Angry Mark persona come out many times over the years. In fact, you and I are such good friends. Angry Mark and Angry Rob have come at each other in the past. That's what good friends do. I might need you to jump in here, Rob, and tell me to calm down from time to time. Is that fair?
That's the first time. That's the first time I've heard Angry Mark in a while. Mark has reason to be angry, as do gun owners all in the country. You talked about Virginia's Citizen Defense League in one of the commercial breaks, or we have a commercial break advertising for them. Virginia gun owners. This is where this is coming next, because
Yes.
I know a lot of private gun makers that are having to destroy or serialize their guns. They're already on the lists. And this is just going to keep going. But I really do want Kevin and Demetrio to have as much time as possible. You and I can maybe hit the Daily Defense next week and catch up on some other details.
Yeah, and feel free to jump in. Your mic is live. You jump in at any time, okay? This conversation is extremely important, and you're acting as an expert here on not just this but other cases as well. So your opinion is very valuable, not just to me but to the audience as well, and I do appreciate you bringing this to our attention today. Let's go back to attorney Kevin O'Brien. Kevin, welcome back. Now, one of the things I said as we were going to the break that brought me out angry is still where, stored where they're supposed to be. I can keep my guns where I want here. I live in a free state. And it angers me beyond belief that everything your client, Demetrio, our guest, Demetrio, you're there, and welcome back in, my friend. We'll go to you in just a second. Everything he is facing is legal where I am, and that should piss off every single American out there that lives in a free state that knows what fellow Americans are having to face. I can only imagine, Demetrio, how you feel knowing that. And Kevin, you gotta, I don't know if you can calm me down on this or not. I'm gonna do my level best. But this is roughshod over Americans, and they want more of it.
Well, from my perspective, I don't think anybody should calm down. It's crazy to me what is happening.
Wow.
And you've got different rights for citizens depending on where they live.
Right.
And in this particular case, not only, I just feel awful for Demetrio. And even when I talk to people who maybe are not aligned with me on my beliefs as far as the Second Amendment goes, they still don't even think it's justice. So the part of the problem is like, most people don't understand what's happening and what they're doing to citizens. And it's not just Demetrio. They're trying to scare other citizens by, putting his face all over the media and saying, listen, citizens, if you don't get in line, you're next. So, you've got Demetrio who's staring at a potentially long prison sentence, but you've got the message that's being sent to the rest of the citizens and the rest of the people who are responsible, good gun owners, as they have a God-given right to do, who are terrified too, because they don't want to lose their family or be put in a cage with, people who may actually belong there. and leave their job and their families and all of that behind just because they owned guns that the state of New York says you can't own.
Yeah, Demetrio, I'm going to ask you a tongue-in-cheek question, but there's a method to my madness. Welcome back, my friend. I'm sorry you're going through this.
Thank you, sir.
But I'm going to ask this. So please let me into the criminal mind, because clearly the state's trying to paint you as a criminal. Please tell me when you decided to become a criminal. What day did you wake up and say, you know what, I think I'm going to criminal today because, well, I'm just going to criminal, when all you're doing is nothing? How does that work? And I can't even imagine the shock that you went through. How many cops were there and how many guns were pointed at you? Listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, particularly if you live in New York and other blue states. What happened? How many? Just curious.
There was quite a bit. The actual traffic stop in the morning when they first stopped me, there was probably in excess of 15 officers, most of them undercover, with full tactical gear on, in operator mode, ready to take me out of the car. I was incredibly nervous, obviously, but I remained calm, got out of the vehicle, remained calm with the investigators, as cooperative and as much of a gentleman as I could be. Mm-hmm. Didn't give anybody a hard time. Didn't give them a hard time about letting him into the home once I read the warrant. When we got to my home, there was an additional 30 to 50 state police waiting in different vehicles, vans, all over my neighborhood. Took up the whole one side of the street. They went over, talked to family members of mine while I was in handcuffs in front of them. They really went, which I can't figure out without knowing anything about the case, really went on a crazy media blast and had media parked outside my home, harassing my neighbors, showing my home online. There was people in Facebook comments on the news stories saying, telling people how to get to my house. After my arrest, I had a gentleman show up in my yard while I was playing with my children and begin to pepper me with questions about my charges, because he didn't agree with it. And I'm in a weird spot because I have these charges going, and I can't properly address the situation. But at the same time, I have someone who's unknown to me on my property harassing me and my children for no reason. Yeah, because of these news stories, because they got they got everyone so amped up.
Yeah, let me say this.
That was my biggest concern.
Well, sure. Besides the fact they would have killed you, let me say this. All you tyrants that are in New York listening to this right now, this has just been given huge national attention, and it isn't going to go away. I guarantee this is angering a lot of good, decent people that are going to come to Demetrio's defense and aid here, okay? That's going to happen. And if those of you that live in these states, if you've ever thought about fleeing and you need a little shove, this could be it. My God, because this could happen to you. Kevin, imagine how many people have bought things online and now are thinking in New York, holy crap, am I next? What's your response?
Of course. And one, in a realistic world, that is a fear that they should have. It's not a fear that I think our founding fathers would be comfortable with at all. The government should be fearing the people, not the other way around. But in New York, at a minimum, Demetrio hit it on the head. This was a show. They did put out all of these stories about him to make him look like the bad guy that he is clearly not. I've tried to talk until I'm blue in the face. I'm like, why do you think this man deserves to be behind bars? Point to me a reason why we should take our time and our effort and take him away from his family. And there's no plausible explanation. He's a good guy. I've been near him. This case is eating me up at this point, and that's why we're doing this. I normally wouldn't have my clients talking to media. That's normally rule number one.
Yeah.
But
my own as well.
Right now, we're up against it, and if we don't talk, I'm worried that the next step is he's going to be trying to talk from behind bars, and that's too late. You know, the impact has already happened at that point. In fact, it's too late right now. He shouldn't even be going through this. He shouldn't even have to be dealing with me.
Now, you and I, when we spoke earlier, you mentioned that the state keeps moving the goalposts. They keep criminalizing things. How do you stay up on what's happening? Because this is intentional. And the, guys, I want you to do me a solid here, listeners. If you want to hear what I talked about, I'll take us to the break with this. I was showing you on Friday, and I've got a 3-part video series. The first 2 videos are out. I talked about the multi-pronged approach that the other side is going to use as they've been getting slapped back and losing in court. And these are real human beings that are facing the results of what we just talked about this past week. This could happen to you if you live in one of these states. And the operative words here are moving the goalposts. When we come back, I'll go back to Kevin and ask him about that, because it's important to understand, how do you stay ahead of these whacked out, crazy tyrants when this is their end game, is to lock you up and put you in the slammer to keep you from buying guns? Well, because the Supreme Court says that we can't ban these anymore. Good. We'll just lock them up. Yeah, we're going to a break. It's a good time to take a break. Again, when we come back, we'll talk with Demetrio, we'll talk with Rob, and we'll talk with Kevin. Don't go away. And Rob Pincus jumped back in here with me. I'm going to bring you in real fast. I mentioned earlier, I was glad there was some Blantons out here. I'm probably going to use it. I'm going to tell Rob, and I'll tell you listeners, stick around for the next hour, because I might not be able to wait till the show's over. Rob, I'm so angry about this. Honest to God, my head is spinning on this, because this is real. Now, you've done a lot of gun making. You know, you've run the matches, et cetera, and the media likes to refer to those guns as what, Rob?
Oh, they're ghost guns.
Ghost guns. Woo, boo, scary ghost guns. Have you ever had this concern? I mean, you're born and raised in Jersey. You live in a free state right now, but has this ever been a concern of yours as you've been doing this? Because you've been very vocal about it, and you've been out there on social media.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I lived in Colorado when Colorado changed the laws, specifically in Denver. They changed the laws a couple of times on me when I lived there, and one of the changes they made was that we could no longer privately make firearms. So here I am running the gunmakers match, residing both in Florida and Colorado, very obviously very public. I live my life pretty much in people's faces with guns all the time, and knowing that if I crossed the wrong person, or somebody got the wrong idea, or somebody just got the bright idea to try to come after me, it wouldn't be hard for them to use the same kind of evidence, quote unquote, that was used in this case and others I'm familiar with in New York, to get a search warrant to come into my home in Colorado and accuse me of doing something wrong. Now, obviously, my practices of what I did in Colorado changed. I also have a Type 7 FFL manufacturing licenses, which changes some of the details of what you can do in different states. But ultimately, sure, we're all one piece of paperwork away from facing the exact kind of search and intrusion that Demetrio and others have faced, and that we don't want anybody else to have to face. And that's why it's so important that you are helping to put this story out. And I know that the guys appreciate it, and I appreciate it as well.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. Kevin, let's go back to you, Kevin O'Brien, attorney. Kevin, you talked about moving the goalposts. I want to use this as an example for other people who are listening to well over 1.5 million, 2 million people tuned in on several hundred radio stations around the nation, and more will pick it up on podcasts by the tens and tens of thousands. I don't know that you can give any advice here. I don't know how you would give advice here, but you mentioned that the state keeps moving the goalpost. Was everything that he was buying legal at the time he was buying it? Demetrio, we'll go to you on this in just a second as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And,
okay.
Things change at a moment's notice, and it's impossible to keep up with it, even as an attorney, let alone a citizen.
So what is your recommendation to law-abiding people who are breaking no laws that find themselves now, because I guarantee you there's people across, particularly in New York State, that are listening, that are thinking, well, I've bought stuff online. Am I next? The fear. What is your advice to them as an attorney and just as an American citizen?
I wish I had an answer. I think that we have to be more vocal, and we have to organize together to make this known. And I heard from listening to the show while we're on break, these are not, needs, these are rights. And we have a right that is bestowed upon us by that beautiful document that's being perverted every day, the Constitution of the United States. And that's what we have to get back to. But if we don't organize together, we've got no chance.
Yeah, we fall together, right? Alan Gottlieb, founder of the Second Amendment Foundation, Demetrio, has famously said on this program many, many times over the years, it's not the Bill of Wants, it's the Bill of Rights. And you find yourself in this horrible position. What is your advice to, you were simply buying parts. What's your advice to Americans across the country, not just in New York and behind the blue wall, in particular, because that's where the gravest threat is at this point, clearly in New York. But do you feel like they conspired against you? Do you feel that how they got to you? I mean, illegally going through these things? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not law enforcement. And I'm not up on New York state law. But what is your advice to other people who are simply just living their lives as free people, or so they think?
My advice to everyone would be to be very, very careful. I am here to tell you in no uncertain terms, there are lists. And to your point earlier about that, this could be part of the Biden era overreach, it's interesting that you say that, because I think a lot of these lists are coming from that Honor Ally case initially. And then that's kind of trickling down into more out of the federal hands and into local departments. There are state departments as well. And it, again, looking at the list, there's probably a lot of names on those lists that don't want to be seen, that are in positions, that are supposed to be curbing this activity. So how they're selecting who to go after is definitely an interesting question, right? There are documents that Kevin and I have seen that they had a list of people in my city that they knew had criminal histories, were in possession of firearms. 2 of them were selling online. And this is in my city. And they go after me instead.
Now, you're in Albany, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, Albany listeners, you're tuned in. I hope you're paying very careful attention here. It's hard to, how do you give advice on something like that? Kevin, I feel you. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Other than, I guess, like Demetrio, like you just said, be very, very careful. I don't even know, how do you be careful when the goalposts are constantly changing? I guess it's impossible to do. Kevin, I don't know of any other way to say that. I'm talk radio host, and I'm finding myself speechless right now, frankly.
Yeah, it's difficult, It's tough because you want to say move to another state, but it seems to be coming for everybody at one point or another. And each state seems to creep into it. I mean, I understand there are still some great states out there, but right now it's just very concerning because it changes on a day-to-day basis. And Demetrio is a perfect example that it's creepy. They're surveilling people by what they buy, by things that they buy that are legal, to try to lead them to a search warrant to come in and look through your house and through your things. And it was never even about the guns. When they left some guns. They just got enough to get him on the highest charges possible. They weren't concerned about safety because they knew he wasn't a danger. He's never been a danger.
No, that's what I was talking about Friday, this gun safety BS nonsense. And that's exactly what it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's an excuse. We've only got a few seconds left. Demetrio, do you have a GoFundMe or anything we can put out there at this point? I guarantee you there's listeners that would love to help you. We've got just a few seconds. If you can give me that. If not, we'll find out later down the road. Go for it.
I don't, but Kevin and I can definitely discuss that later for sure.
All right, and you both will come back on the program, right? Kevin, we've got 10 seconds. Go ahead.
I would love to, but honestly, be loud about this because it's another citizen just like you and me. So I really appreciate you having us.
No, and I appreciate you coming on here and opening up. Real quick, how many
30.
charges? We've got 20, but maybe another 10 seconds. How many charges are you facing, Demetrio?
15.
15 charges, guys. You can do the math on the
20.
penalties here. the prison sentences. This is what this real man is facing right now, and it could be you. And ladies and gentlemen, if you live behind that wall, it very well could be you. Thank you both for being here. Rob Pincus, thanks for being here. I'll talk with you after the show. We'll bring you back on to discuss it during the Daily Defense. Coming back with the roundtable, guys. Don't go away. Unbelievable. All right, guys. So I'm getting text messages and some emails from many of you, and I see some messages. People want to hear some sausage during this break. They want Angry Mark to come out. I got to be honest with you. I don't even know what I can say right now. I don't even know if it's internet friendly, and just about everything's internet friendly. And I really don't even want to go there because I don't want anybody to think any less of me because of what would come out of my mouth right now. But if this doesn't piss you off and anger you, you know, the Tate Adamiak story we've been covering with Lee the Gunwriter Williams is infuriating enough. This is worse than Tate's story. And not that there's a comparison. I mean, there are some similarities here. But this man is looking at 15 indictments, every one of them, Class A or B felonies in New York. The amount of time this man is looking at, he won't survive if he gets it. And I'm going to, you know, I don't know what to tell. If you live behind that wall, I want you to go back and listen to Friday's program. It's up on podcast, and even better, if you would go watch the 3 segments. I broke each segment out for YouTube videos. Segment 1 and segment 2 are already out. And segment 3 is going to be cut up tomorrow, but I can promise you that this hour will be cut up into shorts and longer form videos for YouTube as well. People need to hear this. Americans across the country need to hear this. But if you live behind this wall and you've considered ever thought about just fleeing, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that will do it to you. And I can't even imagine if you're somebody that's been following the law or thought you've been following the law in New York because their laws changed. Guys, the fact that they did this, how they did it, stinks to high heaven, number one. Number two, this is a good guy. He's you. He's me. And this is who they're trying to make an example of, and there is a reason they're doing it. And if the fact that they've got this out to media as a warning to others doesn't make that point and drive that home to you, you are just simply not paying attention. These people hate you. They will wreck your lives. They don't give 2 shits about your family, your kids, your job, your future. They couldn't care less. You need to think about that because this is the direction they're going, and that's what we touched on and hit on Friday. Very, very important stuff. So make sure to go check those videos out on YouTube. Segment 1 and Segment 2 are up. I would appreciate it. Jump in the comments if you were watching this and add to the discussion. It's a conversation that has to be had. And I, just like the attorney himself, how do you even advise something like this? But imagine he had over 45 cops. Every one of them would have killed him. Every one of them would have killed him. Fortunately, he responded the right way. But I want to thank both of them, and I just talked to Rob briefly about it on a private phone call, and I thanked him for bringing this story to our attention. Rob will be on the show on Thursday, as there will be time, obviously, have gone by between today's program and Thursday's program. Rob and I will be talking about it. We will know more at that time, so make sure to tune into Thursday's broadcast as we get a little bit more information. But we're not going to let this one go. This one's not going away for us. Terrible, terrible stuff. But you needed to hear it. You needed to hear it, and I thank them for coming here. Normally, I wouldn't bring somebody on, but these guys are up against it, man, and they now need everybody to hear it. If you live in New York, call the prosecutor's office in Albany and tell them politely, as best you can, to drop this. All I can say at this point is good luck. You know who you're dealing with, okay? They don't care. They don't listen to you. They couldn't give a shit. They just don't care. And this is what they're willing to do. And it could be you. And I don't know what to tell you if you live there other than get the hell out. And welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Armed American Radio's Monster Cast begins hour 3. If you're rejoining us, welcome back. If you're just joining us, welcome in. We have a lot of new stations around the country, and there are probably some that I'm unaware of yet because I haven't seen the report. So to all of you, welcome to the broadcast. We appreciate you being here very much. Show is being brought to you by the NRA, nra.org/AAR. And of course, we're in the Kahr Firearms Group studios. Got my cool Kahr hat on over here, wearing the flag and the Kahr hat. Flying the colors proudly, ladies and gentlemen. I was carrying a car today because, well, I carry a car on a fairly regular basis, as you should be, too. We'll talk with Justin Moon about that coming up. Of course, we're in the CZ studios. Got me a CZ, too. Do you have a CZ, too? Yeah, great guns. Those CZ guns are fantastic as well. And, of course, it's all coming to you from the Patriot Mobile Communication and Command Center. Greg in Dallas, Texas, and an absolutely infuriating previous hour. I'm just going to let you do your thing and tell people where they can watch the show, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sure. Places to see Angry Mark while he's venting during the sausage. You can head over to YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. Do a search for Armed American Radio with Mark Walters. You can head over to X and watch us at AAR Mark. You can always head on over to armedamericanradio.org or .com, hit that menu icon, then select your watch live or listen live options. And to join our live chat, just download Telegram, create your profile, and search for Armed American Radio Conversations.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I got some text messages and emails during the break. It was interesting for those of you listening on radio. People wanted to hear the sausage in between the breaks because I speak freely on the internet. And I got to be honest with you. I jumped on and spoke for a couple minutes about my thoughts on that previous hour. We're going to go there in just a few minutes with the guys, catch them up to speed, and give them a quick lowdown. I'm pretty sure Ryan's probably tuned in. He's up on camera with us now. Ryan, we appreciate you being here. Thank you. But what I have to say isn't even internet friendly, ladies and gentlemen. Just about everything's internet friendly, okay? That's how infuriating it was. We'll talk about it with the crew. But because Ryan's on camera here, we'll jump on. Ryan Petty, welcome into the program, friend. How are you?
Doing well tonight, Mark. Great to be with you.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Did you get a chance to listen to that previous hour?
I did, and I commented in the chat. What this world needs is FCC unfriendly, Mark. That's what I'm doing right now.
I was afraid to go there during the break on the internet, guys. It's that bad. We will do our level best. We will stay FCC friendly on this. We're going to talk about this again in the next hour, right? When you leave a talk radio host speechless, you got a problem on your hands there. Brad Premo, welcome back, brother. So you were just in Spain. Spain and territorial Spain has been all over the news lately. How you doing, Brad? How was your trip? Welcome home, brother.
It's good to be home, and nice to have you. Had a great trip, and it was always an eye-opening experience to go to another part of the world and see things in person, and also get the viewpoints of people who are actually living through it. And I tell you, the U.S. is not nearly as unpopular as Democrats had to believe.
That's good.
Everyday Europeans, that's for sure. They envy us in almost every way possible.
That's
not a bad thing they envy us, but man, my heart hurts those people because they don't have Donald Trump, have their back. They are literally just out there on their own, trying to fight against, all sorts of evil.
Socialism and communism, something that Justin Moon knows very well. Justin Moon, CEO of Kahr, we're in the Kahr Firearms Group studios. Justin, I got to ask you, I should probably know the answer to this question, but I hadn't had a chance to talk to you. Did you go to Des Moines, Iowa? Were you in Iowa? Are you still in Iowa? Are you home, or did you not go?
No, I didn't go to Iowa this time, but that's a bit of a trip.
Yeah, that is a bit of a trip.
When Gold was in Tennessee, it was a lot more convenient. And
where are you based right now? In Tennessee. So absolutely.
Well, I have a place in Tennessee.
Yeah. Well, I would have been. This is the first one I missed. The Gun Owners of America Convention. I enjoy going. I had an opportunity to meet with Kahr and interview him. And some other great folks at the last convention. But I had personal issues. My mom and dad were moving this weekend, and I had to do the work and that kind of thing. And that was all good, went very well. But we're glad you're here. And I don't have to say, hey, glad you had safe travels or safe travels back. Guys, we're going to bring Ryan and I bring you up to speed here on a conversation we had in the previous hour. That I have to continue this conversation. Give you a quick version. But in the previous hour, I had a gentleman by the name of Demetrio Daga from New York. A 100% law-abiding, zero criminal record, no history whatsoever, just a normal guy, dropped his kids off at school, and then was surrounded by over 15 undercover agents at gunpoint. Every one of them would have killed him if he didn't give the response that they wanted. And they served a search warrant, and they took him back to his house and went through and raided his home for buying legal gun part products off of eBay. It turns out they were searching. They're doing online searches for people who are purchasing parts online. He had no idea. They showed up at the house. When he got to the house, there were over 30 additional officers here. He's now looking at 15 Class A and B felonies. He is facing decades behind bars, and he had his attorney with him, Kevin O'Brien, who made it very clear that the best deal they got so far was an offer to go to jail for 8 years. And the guy was simply buying parts. Much, guys, if you follow the show, and Ryan, you do, Tate Adamiak, very similar here, but it was federal. This is New York State. And it could happen to anybody who has bought anything in the state of New York now because they keep moving the goalpost. Ryan, you heard the conversation. Angry Mark popped. And I just want to get your thoughts on this because this should literally scare the living bejesus out of every American, particularly if you live in New York and you're listening in a lot of cities in New York, including New York City, behind that blue wall. Ryan, give us your take.
Yeah, look, as I listened to you interview him, what I heard was just a guy that's absolutely helpless, right? When agents show up on your, I think he had just dropped his daughter off at school. They show up, they've got a warrant. Obviously, Mark, we've seen enough, you and I have seen enough videos on YouTube and others, the body cam videos and all that, where, at that moment is not the time to defend your rights, so to speak. You've got to comply with that search warrant. Obviously, you want to talk to an attorney as quickly as possible. But even that, in that particular instance, was not afforded to this individual, right? He didn't have a chance to call anybody. They came into his home. They forced him to open up his home, his shop, his closets. I can't remember if he said safe, but he had to open up his phone. Everything was subject to the state having access to it. And the entire time he was going through that story, I kept feeling the helplessness and the hopelessness, right? This is the power of government coming in and without, there is no, it's not like a private company that invades your privacy, right? Where you've got some opportunity to take them to court or whatever. You've just got to comply and hope that they're not there to trump up charges. But really what they're doing is looking for anything that they can use against this guy because they don't care what charges they ultimately bring to him. They believe that any guy that would buy firearms parts online must be involved in some other criminal activity, even if that activity that they're there to search for isn't necessarily criminal, but they want to find something to stick on him. And heaven forbid that if he didn't comply in that situation, if he had tried to fight them, if he had tried to resist, if he had been belligerent to the officers, and I don't condone that. I don't like that anyway, but had he done any of that, he might have ended up in a body bag. Oh, yeah. Because that's the way it felt. It did not feel like legitimate law enforcement trying to enforce legitimate laws of the United States. It felt like a politically motivated group of, I want to be careful what I say here, state actors enforcing unconstitutional laws. And I just felt helpless the entire time. Mark, I found my blood pressure going. Yeah, I'm angry. I'm as angry as you are about this. This should never happen in the United States of America.
No, it shouldn't. And Brad, I'm glad we're going to you. We're getting ready to take a break. When we come back, we're going to go to you. You've got a lot of years. You're a former law enforcement officer. You're a combat vet. You fought for our constitutional rights. You've taken more than one oath. And guys, I'm going to take us to the break with this on what Ryan just said. You've apparently got 50-plus cops who have no problem doing the bidding of the state and coming after you. This should frighten you on a number of different fronts. I am a huge supporter of law enforcement. I know people who go out there every day and put the uniform on. And I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, these are legitimate questions. But where do you draw the line? And it's a difficult conversation to have. There's really no clear answer to this. I just poured myself a glass of Mott's apple juice. And if you're watching online on YouTube or Facebook or X or Twitter, well, you were paying attention during the break, hopefully. partners, all of them, including Bud's Gun Shop, Arizona Citizens Defense League, CCDL, Virginia Citizens Defense League, and coming up this week, we kick off. You won't believe what's going on in Florida. We're going to be working very closely with FloridaCarry.org beginning next week. They will be on the program with us every single week with their attorneys. Lawsuits are flying down there in the free state of Florida. It never stops, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't matter where you live. All of our great partners can be found, including Daniel Defense, the rest of them. We see Ryan wearing the Daniel Defense shirt. All of them at AmericanRadio.com. Brad Premo, let's go back to you on this. Former law enforcement. When you hear a story like this, where New York State authorities are searching through eBay and looking for purchases and then going after people, the people are literally powerless. Brad, can you imagine how many hundreds of thousands of people in New York should be shaking in their boots right now? And that the fact you've got law enforcement that's just willing to come in and swoop in. What do you say, Brad? What do you say? What can you say?
I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I'd like to know a little bit more about what's going on. I mean, I would imagine that they would have had to subpoena those records from eBay to find out who bought what, when, and where, to use that information and to then get a search warrant. So I'd like to know what they based the subpoena on. But, you know, all that being said, you know, the fact that there's a law on the books anywhere in the United States that can criminalize somebody merely possessing parts of a weapon, parts of a firearm, and to extrapolate that to some sort of crime is absurd on its face. And, you know, the fact of the matter is, a lot of times, which law enforcement is, you're going to run into some local guys in certain areas that are growing up based on uncommon rule.
Right.
And they're not going to see anything wrong with being agents of the state to enforce communist policy. So, you know, in this nightmare scenario of, hey, you know, because we used to talk about this when I was, you know, a police officer. It was always, it would come up every now and then. You know, it was always like, well, what would you do if they passed a law that said you have to go door to door and confiscate guns, right? And everybody I worked with said, well, I would quit because I'm not looking to get killed. You know, I'm not looking to get shot, you know, trying to enforce an unconstitutional law, so I'm just going to stay home. You know, I imagine a lot of places in the Southeast, down here in Tennessee for sure, and probably Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Texas, and, you know, all these states where we know a lot of good people live. Most of law enforcement is going to stand down. They're not going to enforce that law. They're not going to do it. But I'm going to tell you what. Some place like New York, Massachusetts, California, Washington, some places, Oregon, like these places, Chicago, Illinois, like these places that have become communist enclaves in our country, there's going to be plenty of those dudes that see nothing wrong with doing it because that's how they've grown up. That's what they know. And they believe that only they should have, you know, weapons, firearms, and that the state should have the monopoly on violence. And that's how they see things.
Yeah, I believe most law enforcement is good. You know, Justin, there's bad actors in every profession. Okay, there's bad judges in jail, bad accountants, bad lawyers. Okay, bad Indian chiefs. I mean, there's somebody bad in some walk of life sitting somewhere because they did bad things. Now, you know New York very well. You guys left New York at Kahr Arms and moved down to Tennessee or to Pennsylvania. Are you shocked that a New York government would come? We're talking about buying gun parts. These are things that are an inherent right to all Americans, or should be. Now you've got a guy looking at what is likely going to be 70, 80 years in the slammer. Justin, how can any of this be justified in America today?
Well, I think what they're going after is our fundamental right to make personal guns for ourselves, you know, making guns from scratch. I mean, it's been well understood that the right to bear arms, you know, traditionally in the U.S. covered the right for individuals to personally make firearms for their personal use without having to have them serialized or registered with the state. But they're definitely trying to restrict that aspect of the Second Amendment, which is a huge infringement. So we as a Second Amendment community really need to push back against this because, you know, everybody has a right to make their own gun, and that's the way it should be. You should individually, you should have a right to exercise your Second Amendment, not only to buy a gun, but to make a gun.
Well, Justin, how many people across the country over decades, over so many years, let's say well over 100 years, how many have built their own 1911, for crying out loud, over the years?
There are a lot of Americans out there who have built their own guns for their personal use, and that's always been legal.
That has always been legal unless you live under tyranny. Ryan, as an FFL yourself, as a Florida resident, I know, obviously, I heard your statements previously, but you're as angry as I am about this. I just wish that I had some answers to people that are listening, and I don't. I feel bad. I can't offer any advice. What do you tell somebody? Comply with these unconstitutional edicts or else. What the hell kind of advice is that to give somebody?
It's not very satisfying.
No,
right?
It's not.
As you're saying, it's infuriating. And so I think, the best advice I can do, I can give is move to a free state. The best
Fair.
possibility you have is to live somewhere without these rules, without the kind of authoritarian political class that compels law enforcement to do these unconstitutional things. And then you need to stop voting the way you used to vote when you lived in the place that does the bad thing to you. So don't do that again. Don't go to a free state and vote for the same crap that caused you to leave in the first place. And this is the lesson many New Yorkers and many Californians don't understand when they move to free states. What the state I used to grow up in, Nevada, or I grew up in and used to live in, Nevada, was a free state. It's now somewhat purple because of all the Californians that came over, leaving California because of all the garbage that goes on there. Gavin Newsom and that crowd. And then they moved to Nevada. What do? Sign up for the Democrat Party and start voting the way they did when they were in California. Same thing happens here in Florida. Now, Florida, contrary to Nevada and some other places, has actually done a really good job under our current governor, Governor DeSantis, in really
Ryan, hold that thought. We've
Yeah.
got 20 seconds. When we come back, I'll let you finish that thought. Brad, I want to go to you. Another question regarding this. There are so many. But again, hard break. When we come back, we'll go back around the table with the crew, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show, guys. I had blackout coffee in here. I had a pot and a half today because I've been up. My little dog woke me up at 3:30 in the morning. Got hungry and decided to keep Dad up for the rest of the night because it was thundering for a little bit. So that's okay. Because I know that there will come a day where I'd give anything in the world for to wake Dad up at 3:30 in the morning. And I hope you love your dog as much as we love Huey at the house. We call our entire downstairs Huey Village. But it'll go back to the blackout coffee. This ain't blackout coffee because the blackout coffee's gone. This is apple juice. Guys, longer available. It was the 31st. That was it. And I've been telling you, if you didn't get it by the 31st, that $250, but we'll have that pulled for you. Just want to throw that out for transparency. Let's go back now to Brad Premo. Brad, one of the things that infuriated me the most when I was listening to Dimitri talk about, he said that he had just dropped his kids off at school, and he got pulled over by 15 undercover agents. He had absolutely no idea what was going on, and next thing you know, there's a felony stop. He's got 15 guns pointed at him. He had no earthly idea what was happening, absolutely no clue. He had done nothing wrong. He didn't know anything. And when they took him back to the house and executed the search warrant, there were another 30 cops there. So there's a total of 45 to 50 cops on scene. Again, he had no idea what was going on. And one of the things he said, and I wrote it down right here in my little notepad when he said it. There it is if you're looking on screen. That's it when I wrote it down. He said, I was surprised because when I got in the house, all my guns were stored where they were supposed to be. That set off angry Mark Brad like nobody's business. Because you know where my guns are stored in my house, Brad? Like yours. Any damn place I want them because it's my house. What does that mean? Stored where they're supposed to be. I'm going to assume that's a reference to a New York draconian safe storage law, Brad. Doesn't that, just that alone, Brad, and he's wishing that was the only charge. Good heavens. Think about it. Talk to me. Calm me down. Try. I dare you.
No. I tell you what, like you actually probably reacted to the same. I would react to the same way to those words. Supposed to be. What's that mean? Like, because
right.
You're right. It's supposed to be wherever I happen to store it. That's where it's supposed to be because it's my property. And it kind of just goes to show you that our people that are living essentially behind the iron curtain in our own country in so many ways have been indoctrinated either through insidious through the media or just they just learn that because of what they have to do to exercise their rights. But I have a hard time believing or imagining a situation in my mind where one of my friends here in Tennessee says I had my guns stored where it's supposed to be and be referring to like having it someplace that was mandated by the state,
right?
And so it's just but it goes to show you how insidious the commies are and where it kind of leads to in the mindset it leads people into, which is maybe is kind of it points towards how they're able to get away with what they're able to get away with, because these people, unfortunately, people just get conditioned to put up with whatever garbage the state foists upon them because they feel like they have no other choice.
You're right. And Justin, and they're hiring more commies up there, Justin. They're hiring more commies. I guess they want more of it. Ryan refers to them as the govern me harder crowd. I guess they're getting it. You know more than anybody here about commies.
When the commies get in power, they start putting communists as law enforcement, and then it goes all downhill from there because they'll do whatever they're told to do.
See Cuba, brother.
And unfortunately, New York has gone down that path.
Yeah, it's hard for those of us that don't live under that tyranny, Justin, to try to understand that. We talk about these things all the time. Countless. I've lost count how many times we've talked about these bogus safe storage laws and all this nonsense and the fake language, the gun safety language and all this other crap that they throw around. And we wonder, and I've asked the question, Justin, out loud on my own show, how would they even know? Well, guys, now you know. Now you know. They're just going to start searching online records and your purchase records because, well, they can because they're the state, and then decide whose house to go to. And they've got now, Justin, what they believe is probable cause to go in, obviously enough to get a judge to sign a warrant. And lo and behold, your guns aren't stored the way they want them to. Justin, do you agree with me that my home is my safe and that when I lock my doors, my guns are locked up and it's none of their freaking business?
Well, the rights which civilians have in the end are all determined by the civilians of the nation. I mean, if we stand up and we say these are our rights, these will be our rights. If we give in to the government will take whatever it wants.
Yeah, and what the government giveth, Ryan, the government can taketh away, brother, as you know.
Yeah, we watched that. I mean, that's the theme tonight, right? That's exactly what happens when, I think Brad just said it, we get conditioned to listen through the media and the politicians talking over and over. We get conditioned into complacency. We get conditioned into allowing the government to tell us how we may exercise our constitutional rights. The Bill of Rights was not a guidebook for citizens to exercise their constitutional rights. It was a restriction on the government's imposition on God-given rights. And it's been flipped around for so long that people behind the behind the blue curtain,
it's become their norm.
Get it backwards. They don't understand it. And until we restore Americans to thinking the right way about it, we're going to continue to see these kind of violations.
And you bring up a great point. Until we get Americans to thinking about it, this is why this is why the tyrants in New York immediately brought the media in to put their spin on this, to paint this guy as this monster, because that's how they do it. Guys, when they control the media, they control the message. When they control the message, they control the masses. It's referred to, Justin, as what? Communist propaganda. Isn't that how the machine works? Wasn't Joseph Goebbels wonderful at it?
Well, Joseph Goebbels was a Nazi, a socialist, very similar to communists. But we need to remember, too, that when the Declaration of Independence was written, it was actually written as an appeal to the court, God's court, and basically was written as a legal appeal, submitting to the court of the Creator that these are the reasons why we the American people had decided and have a right to separate from the British Crown and the British government.
Yeah.
I think at this point, if we want to get our rights back, we're going to have to make some kind of resubmit a new legal appeal to the Almighty.
I'm with you on this. I don't know, guys. I wish I had the answer. I do. It's maddening. It really is maddeningly frustrating, because we don't have the answer. We know, we talk about it every day, that we have to do these things, and then when you see this tyranny in action, you question. Look, I mean, there's an old adage. I was watching a YouTube video earlier today, and the guy said, "Look." Cop told him that when he made the arrest, he said, "You can fight it in court." And the problem is, they know that. The old adage is, you can fight it in court, you might beat it in court, but you can't beat the ride. And that's exactly what's going on here. Fine, fight it in court, but you're not going to beat the ride. You're going down. Your life is upended. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the In-N-Out in Idaho, and we're going to start with Brad Premo, CEO of Lead Slingers Whiskey, former law enforcement and combat vet. We'll be back right after the break. Don't go away. And at armedamericanradio.com. If it were not for them, we would not be here in our 18th year, and we are looking forward to another 18 years. And guys, I've got some real exciting news for you coming up in the very near future. I have to keep it close to the vest, but you're going to see a lot more of Armed American Radio, and I mean see a lot more of Armed American Radio in the very, very near future. Brad Premo, let's go to you here. I want to start, let's go into the kind of a happy story here that's not a happy story. Of course, we had a mass shooting in Idaho, in Twin Falls, Idaho, at the In-N-Out. Nothing happy about that. Very tragic turn of events. Sadly, we see too much of that. If there's any silver lining here, it was because it was stopped by a good guy, armed citizen, who cornered the shooter along with an off-duty cop, forcing him to change his plans, thereby saving, and here's the good part of this terrible story, saving countless lives, Brad. But the other side says that never happens, except when it does happen. And I got to tell you, Brad, virtually all mainstream media is actually covering this right now. And the reason they're covering it is because it was caught on video. They can't deny it. They can't hide it. They don't want to report it because it blows up their narrative, but they are, because they were forced to. So twofold question, and I'll take this to Justin as well, just for you, Justin. Twofold question. First statement. I want your thoughts on what happened and the fact that there was, thank God, a good guy there that helped put a stop to this. And the second thing is, because the media does have to report on this, could that possibly change some minds in media that look at this and say, you know what, I'm an honest journalist, and I got to tell you, I sure am glad that guy was here. I might just change my tune, so have at it, brother.
Well, I think it's very clear. A good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun, and the more good guys we have out there with guns, the less crime that there will be, and that's been statistically proven. And now we have very clear video evidence of a crime being, reduced and, by an armed citizen. And this is exactly the type of coverage we need.
It exactly is. And Brad, let me go over to you now. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's been shown, time and again that, frankly, armed citizens are more effective at stopping these incidents than law enforcement, because law enforcement, what they say, when you need a cop in seconds, they're minutes away. But if you have an armed citizen there, they can address the situation. And the fact of the matter is that the vast majority of the time, it's been shown with these mass shooters, the second that they encounter any sort of resistance, they stop.
Yep.
They're not there trying to actually have a fight. They're just there to kill. And once somebody puts up a fight, they don't know what to do. Most of them are cowards or mentally ill, whatever's wrong with them. They're not looking to have a fight. And so the fact that if you have an armed citizen there that can put up resistance, as soon as something goes south like that, there's a really good opportunity there to stop those situations before they ever get as bad as what they could be. So, I think that's the lesson taken from this. Whether the media is going to put that out there or not, I mean, I think you and I both know they're not going to frame it that way. But that's the lesson I hope a lot of people can take from this, which is, carry a gun and support people who do carry guns legally because they're there to help you.
Yeah, and what's interesting, and Ryan, obviously, you know why I'm saving you for last on this, and I want you to tell a lot of new listeners around the country why something like this is so important to you.
Well, look, the reason it's important is because we've got, look, Justin said this. I think it was very important what Justin said at the right before the last break, right? These are God-given rights that we have as Americans. They don't come from government. They don't come because the founders created them. These are inherent rights that we have. We have a right to defend ourselves and defend the lives of others from evil people who are intent on taking them. This guy today at the In-N-Out grabbed a rifle and he wanted to kill people. Apparently it started inside, it moved outside, and he killed 3 and injured 7, I believe. And an armed citizen, to your comment, Mark, an armed citizen grabbed a firearm and began returning fire. And to exactly what Brad said, the moment these guys meet resistance, they stop their attack. And this guy turned the gun on himself and ended his own life. And I will say, as my online friend, Mr. Guns and Gear, likes to say, saving the taxpayers millions of dollars. So, look, at the end of the day, we have these rights to protect lives and our liberties. And fortunately, unfortunately, these things are going to happen in a free society. These are evil people that are going to perpetrate these things, but we have a right to defend ourselves. It's God-given. And I'm thankful that it happened in a free state where somebody could carry a firearm and stop it. Imagine if this carnage happened in California or New York or some other place behind a blue wall. They would have been waiting, as Brad said, minutes for law enforcement to respond.
There would have been likely dozens of deaths, likely dozens. Yeah. It could have been more. Dozens can be more. It's just there's no way to know exactly how many lives were saved, but it was a lot. And I can only say, ladies and gentlemen, to those of you who might be new to the show, Ryan is a Parkland father who knows all too well what happens when there's no one there to defend innocent life. And I guess, again, that's something that leaves me speechless as well. But you were instrumental in fixing that in Florida. Thank God Idaho has those laws. Those of you that live in states where where they're trying to stop you from having the ability to do that, all you have to do is look at what happened in Idaho today, and the video is right there. It's right there. The proof is right in front of your face that it works. Countless lives were saved, and our hearts go out and our prayers go out to the ones that did not make it, and hopefully that 7 stays as wounded and there's no more. But good heavens, thank God for that individual, and thank God for that off-duty law enforcement officer that joined together and stopped that carnage. Ryan Petty, thank you for being here, brother. Appreciate your insight as always. And Justin Moon, thank you for being here. Fan favorite for a reason, ladies and gentlemen. If you're new to the show, now you know why. And Brad Premo, same thing goes for you. And welcome back. Welcome back home. We've all been seeing what Spain's up to right now. Looks like they're trying to kill themselves over there and destroy their own culture. But we're glad you're back here where you belong, safe and sound. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get up and do this again tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, precisely because they don't want us having these conversations. That's why we do it.
30.
Make sure to go check out the video series that I've done on New York and a couple other states. I covered that ground, as I mentioned. It's all there for you on YouTube. Like us there, subscribe over there, spread the word, get the videos out. We appreciate it. Make sure to comment. And please visit all of our great partners at armedamericanradio.com that make this show possible now in its 18th year, soon to be 19. Enjoy your day. Stay safe, guys. We'll see you on the radio. Thanks for tuning in.